Alrighty, let's take a look at this, guys. Where's Charles? Charles is slacking again.
Google Cloud.
Yep.
The Tools of Torment mid-chapter update is quickly approaching, so that can only mean one thing: it's time for another developer update. In this series of posts, we cover some of the biggest changes and additions making their way to the game. In this edition, we'll dive into various quality of life and accessibility improvements, as well as an extensive list of balance adjustments. Without further ado, let's kick things off with a highly requested feature. Bloodweb improvements. Who would have thought that too many blood points could ever be a problem? After our progression overhaul last year, many of you found yourself with a hefty amount of blood points, so many in fact that finding the time to spend them before your next match could be difficult. We've seen many suggestions for ways to improve the spending process, and rather than picking just one, we've implemented a few fan-favorite ideas. We hope these new features will allow you to spend more time playing and less time shopping. Bloodweb Chain. The first new addition is very simple. Select any node and the game will automatically buy anything needed along the way. This allows you to purchase multiple nodes with a single button press and ensures that you can get exactly what you want. But as always, the entity is ever present and may consume one of these nodes before the chain can be completed, so plan wisely. Automatic purchase. If you're just looking to level up your character quickly and cheaply and don't care what you get, the new center node in the Bloodweb is perfect for you. Selecting this node will automatically purchase items until the current Bloodweb has been completed.
Maybe cheaply.
This will prioritize perks, then the cheapest option available. This can also be used on partially completed Bloodwebs, allowing you to grab anything you've got your eye on first. To ensure that players familiarize themselves with the contents in a Bloodweb, this button will only appear once the character has been prestiged for the first time.
Okay, so we haven't played Dead by Daylight in a while, but ever since the anniversary update, I've talked about basically how they raised the cost of add-ons specifically for killers. And they've still continued to do so. They increased the rarity of some items in the Bloodweb, but that does not mean you will get meta items in the add-on, in the Bloodweb. And meta being the stuff that is good for your character. And I'm pretty sure that the Bloodweb is rigged based on it will give you stuff that you use the least. It'll give you either based on a personal basis or based on an overall basis for all killers. It will give you items that are less desirable. So even if you have a bunch of iridescents, you're not getting the iridescent that you want. Or if you have a purple, it's not going to be the purple that you need, even though it's purple. Purple all the same, and you assume the drop rate is going to be similar, but it's not. The drop rate is rigged. It's 100% rigged. With the anniversary update, when they added prestige levels to it, they basically made where you went from a level 50 Bloodweb, where you had a bunch of different options all across the whole thing, and you could pick and choose which ones you went for. They changed that from having a bunch of different options you could go for to your points basically go into shit. That's it. You have no choice. If you don't have choices, you can't pick out the option that you need. You can't pick out the meta add-on. If there's not, like 2 iridescents or 3 iridescents, there's no choices. And as such, it can keep feeding you the worst possible option. Whereas if you have 3 choices and they're all the same, you start noticing that, right? There's less opportunity for them to game the system, which is the whole reason I think the 1 to 40 Bloodweb is there. Where you have basically the first 35 levels, you can't get fucking shit out of them. They're just absolutely worthless. It's just a BP sink. They increased the add-on rarity. The rarity was not necessarily the problem. The problem is the fact that it won't give you the options of the add-ons that you actually need. We've talked about this before. Back when I was streaming Dead by Daylight, there are ways you can manipulate the entity to either end the Bloodweb sooner by forcing the entity to close out the Bloodweb, which is something we talked about, or at the same time you can actually engineer it to get the add-ons you want while still, with less optimal decisions. So you're going through a Bloodweb and you're forcing the entity to go into a specific spot so you have options and time to pick out all the add-ons you want in the Bloodweb. It's actually a game, if you think about it. It's not a game at level 40, it's a game at level 50 when you have a bunch of options where you could actually manipulate the entity and you could turn it into a minigame. And I talked about it extensively, and just now, we're actually finally getting other streamers that are talking about that. Like, fucking true. Must be going through my backlog, because he talks about a lot of different stuff. I occasionally tune into his stuff, and the more I watch him, the more I've watched him as of recently, the more it seems like he is just literally just talking about shit from my stream. So, I haven't streamed Dead by Daylight in probably 6 months at this point, but I streamed it for close to 2 years when I was streaming it, And lo and behold, his play style, his play strategy, the stuff that he talks about changed quite a bit right about when I started doing YouTube uploads, and that was last year in August, where he started talking about playing tactically and strategically. Yeah, kind of weird. And now he talks about, what does he say? It's not ping-ponging. What do I call it? Pretty sure I call it ping-pong or rubber banding. I call it rubber banding. Now he calls it, what does he refer to it as? It's basically this. He basically uses his own word to describe it to try and differentiate it for something basically that was a topic that I discussed exclusively. What is the word he uses? Not oscillating. He basically came up with his own word to basically describe rubber banding, where people just basically go back and forth, and you can push them out of an area, and they'll go back and forth, and you can use that force to drive people away and create tension and presence even when you're not around there. It's a very advanced strategy that I use all the time on my channel, and you can find it in the highlights if you think that's not true at all. But 100% there. And he started talking about it again as well. Very weird. And now he talks about how some add-ons are not as rare as they are. Something that I cover constantly when I go through the blood web, when I talk about the add-ons not showing up because the drop rate's rigged. It's one thing if it doesn't show up once, but you can make statistics and you can statistically find out that stuff does not show up when it should. Yeah. Anyways, this whole thing here, like they're acting that, like they're trying to act in your best interest, but at the end of the day, the blood webs are still inferior to what they were prior to the anniversary update. And a lot of people would not prestige. They force you to prestige. A lot of people would not prestige unless they're forced to. That's why they force you to prestige. So instead of not caring about your prestige, you have to prestige no matter what. And as such, that's the only way you can get add-ons that you need to play, especially for killers. But yeah, automatic purchases, blood web chain, it wouldn't even be so bad if you just bought the level 50 blood webs, but they don't give you that option, do they? They just make it so. And by the way, a blood web chain, you can't push the entity the same way unless you apply pressure to certain parts of the blood web. You can't push the entity in the same way. So if you do a blood web chain, there's a high probability you aren't going to get what you want. Automatic purchase just seems like a default option where you're just going to, just try to pound through it. This actually seems like a legitimate option. This seems like a trap in terms of gambling. Lo and behold.
Press to buy. Ever wanted to watch the blood points fly from your pockets at an alarming rate? The new default interaction only requires you to press a node to purchase it, instead of having to hold it. This can be used in conjunction with the other options mentioned above to further speed up the spending process. The interaction can be toggled if you would rather use hold instead.
Okay. Yeah. And like I mentioned before, this is still inferior to what it was prior to the anniversary update. The anniversary update prior to that, there's a lot of ways you can manipulate the blood web. It was fun. I actually enjoyed it. If you actually took time to do it, and other streamers didn't take time to do it, and they had no fucking idea what they're doing, they don't talk about it. As I mentioned, it's kind of funny. When I was streaming Dead by Daylight, there's a lot of opportunities to improve on the game because the people that are streaming it basically have stagnated for the last 5 or so years of their life. They'll talk about how much experience they have. At the same time, they didn't know what tunneling and camping was. They knew what tunneling and camping was a no-no and you shouldn't do it, but they couldn't even do it well. Like when True first started out tunneling and camping, he wasn't very good at it, and arguably he's still not very good at it. And it depends on who you play against, guys. And when we were playing, I don't know if it was intentional prior to them fixing the killer, you could queue into the killer's game with cheating. I don't know if it was basically just we got a bunch of people that tried to queue into my games because they know that I tunnel and camp constantly. It's very likely possible, but like the kind of survivors that you see him go against are not the same. And now, that's another thing he starts talking about. Now he talks about how constrictive the fucking matchmaking is. Something that I talked about all the time, which is the matchmaker will get less and more constrictive depending on the amount of people that are playing. He plays on the Ireland server, which means he basically has no one there, just like Dead. I haven't watched him forever. It's kind of sus, and that's why I don't watch him, because it always seems like he's moving too fast. Dead something, Dead Plays or something like that. Another DBD streamer, but he also plays on the Ireland server. For some reason, Europe has 2 servers. It has Frankfurt, and I don't know if this is necessarily still true. It was up until maybe 3 months ago, is the last time I checked. Frankfurt and Ireland, and it has for basically years. I don't know why it does. Considering if you're in London, you will either get Frankfurt or Ireland. If you're south of London, you'll get Frankfurt. And if you're a little bit north of south, you'll get Ireland all the time because it's closer. And they have almost identical pings. They could literally remove the Ireland server, and people in Ireland would get like a ping of 40. It would be no downside to them. And you could check by basically VPNing to Ireland, and then looking at the ping difference to a Frankfurt server. and it's not much. I don't know why the Ireland server exists. And all it does is fragment the European servers, and as such, you're going to be playing against basically a smaller pool of players, and if you're more or very less skilled, that means you're going to have an extremely hard time or extremely easy time because the matchmaker is going to struggle to find people for you to play against that are around your MMR. But the game doesn't tell you where your MMR is. It doesn't tell you the kind of MMR you're playing against, and that's still going to be restricted by your region because it's not it's not a global leaderboard or global MMR system. So at the end of the day, you're going to be restricted based on your region. And while I wouldn't say everyone in Europe is bad, if you're playing on a small fragmented area, it's definitely going to end up with some weird results. We've talked about this before, though. Anyways, now talks about constricted MMR. Moving along, where the matchmaker gets more or less restrictive. And it depends on the time of day, it depends on who's playing, and it depends on what BHVAR is doing behind the scenes. And I've talked about it on my Twitter extensively as well. This is a pretty cool change.
The terror radius is an integral part of the game, both warning survivors about the approaching killer and activating multiple perks. This can make things difficult for our deaf or hard of hearing players since there is no visual representation of the terror radius strength.
This is funny, because a lot of people, unrelated to being deaf or hard of hearing, a lot of people that were asking for a visual terror radius, I assumed wanted it because they feel as though it would give them an advantage, not because they care about people being deaf. Once again, Dead by Daylight has kind of a very weird juxtaposition between killers and survivors, and there's a lot of survivor mains, and there's a lot of survivor mains that don't give two shits about, like, not just don't give two shits about killers, they're like, fuck killers. I fucking hate killers so much. They want to do anything to fuck killers, and they'll say anything, including hating on NOED to try and get you to not use it, which, by the way, there's still some streamers that are traumatized by NOED and refuse to use it. Why? Oh, because it gives bad data. Oh, because I'm a bad person if I use it. Like, it's literally just ingrained to their brain. There's literally a survivor with their fucking, what's the branding iron, as when they were calves. They were calf killers. There's a survivor main with a branding iron that just like shoved, like, if you guys didn't know what they do with cattle when they brand them is if the area has a certain kind of tree roots or something that is poisonous to the cattle, they'll slather it in their mouth. They'll slather it in their mouth so they can taste it, and then they brand them. And the reason they do this is they associate that pain with that taste, and they will never eat it ever again. So you have, when True was a young streamer, you had a survivor main here that probably was cheating, that just showed him the ropes and made fun of him for using NOED and fucking branded the shit out of him. And just like many killer mains on Dead by Daylight, they're basically whipped at this point. And they refuse to use perks that'll actually help them out. It doesn't matter. Unbreakable is the same thing. It gets the entire team off the ground if they end up in a scenario that's unfortunate to them, they're out of options. They can use an Unbreakable and completely reset the game. Survivors also have options. And that is one of the reasons Dead by Daylight is so unique, guys, is it's one of the few games in which you can actually, it is bad for you to play meta as a killer. It is bad. You shouldn't play meta as a killer. Fucking hilarious. Don't play stuff that helps you. Don't be smart. Don't do things that help you. Fucking hilarious. Absolutely fucking hilarious. And this is another example of that is like NOED. And visual terror radius is something I've seen, and oftentimes they will play the hurt person card where, oh, we got this minority that they need this option, but when in fact survivors really wanted an option that just helps them out. They just want an advantage. It's basically what it comes down to. Like in Fortnite, for instance, they add the visual sound indicators right to the game. Everyone has them on. Why do they have them on? Because it gives you an advantage. It has nothing to do. And it does. You can hear stuff. You can see stuff from much further away than you can actually hear it in the game. Like, it's like maybe I'd say maybe 15% further than you can hear. Like, realistically, they'll show up and you won't hear them, and then you'll hear them. It's like the bare minimum before the volume ramps up, and it'll start showing you where they're coming from. Very, very, very useful. And you don't need to be deaf to use it. They can make it optional. They can make it so if you use the visual indicator, you have to turn off your sound, and people probably wouldn't use it anymore, right? But they don't make it an option. They don't force you to do a certain thing to act like the part. But it's just basically it was just an upgrade. And I don't necessarily think it's wrong. It's like a radar. I don't think it's necessarily wrong for Fortnite. In this case, BHVR found a way of implementing a visual terror radius without making it super fucking OP. to people that aren't hard of hearing, and it's only really helpful to people hard of hearing. This is probably something you're going to see unless people are hard of hearing. And maybe streamers will turn it on because people can see if they have the sound off or something, right? Kind of funny.
Terror radius. The terror radius is an integral part of the game, both warning survivors about the approaching killer and activating multiple perks. This can make things difficult for our deaf or hard of hearing players since there is no visual representation of the terror radius strength, forcing them to use a perks which work in the terror radius as an alternative. This is of course not ideal. We'd like everyone to be able to use the perks they'd like and not be forced to use one to have access to a core part of the game. But we have some good news. A visual terror radius option is here. When enabled in the accessibility options, a heart will appear in your survivor's chest whenever the killer's terror radius can be heard. Lullabies will also appear as a haze in their chest. This heart will become more vibrant and beat more intensely the closer the killer comes. If your character is ever off screen, an indicator will appear if the terror radius is heard, signaling that you should look at your character to see the current state of the terror radius visual feedback. For those who may need it, this heart will also be affected by color blindness settings to ensure that it is adequately visible.
So I don't think this will actually be an advantage for anyone except if you're hard of hearing.
This option
That's actually a pretty good implementation, in my opinion, because heartbeat radius is omnidirectional.
Any terror radius perks, add-ons, and powers.
I think that's pretty good. I don't think most streamers are going to run it unless they have it on for survivors. Map revamps, I guess.
Autohaven Wreckers map updates. This update will feature balance updates to two Autohaven Wreckers maps, namely Blood Lodge and Gas Heaven. Blood Lodge can be a bit of a mixed bag. Depending on how the map generates, there can be plenty of safe pallets near the center or very few, creating either a very safe area or a dead zone. This area also has very few line of sight blockers, which can make it difficult for stealthy killers to sneak up on survivors. Around the edge of the map, on the other hand, features several maze tiles, high walls with a pallet and/or window. Clever survivors can combine these tiles to create stronger loops, making them very difficult to catch. To remedy this, we are making significant layout changes to this map. The Blood Lodge itself will now appear closer to the center of the map, breaking up line of sight and separating some of these safer loops. The maze tiles have also been separated from one another, making it more difficult to combine them together.
Depends on how it turns out.
Gas Heaven features unique car piles which stretch.
Kind of weirdly enough, I think the only map that is, well, there's actually a couple that are really bad. One is Garden of Terror. Garden of Terror is a Heroes of the Storm map. Whatever the jungle map is that they added with, I think it's Haley? Yeah, that's fucking horrible. Absolutely terrible. Mainly the loop in the dining room is horrid. Absolutely fucking horrid. Very, very long loop. There's a lot of maps with extremely long loops. That's a pretty good one, though, because it has like a palette you can access and get completely around the side and stuff, and it turns into a pretty horrid place. That being said, I think the only map that is, well, that one's kind of bad with that fucking dining room window, but putting that aside, Meatpacking Plant, I think, is Gideon. Meatpacking Plant, I think, is probably the worst, and that's mainly due to the number of pallets in there, where you can just go from pallet to pallet to pallet if you know what you're doing, and literally route you through the entire place, and it takes forever as a killer to catch up to them, because they know what they're doing.
Gas Heaven features unique car piles which stretch several tiles long. These special tiles can get in the way of gameplay, however, making it difficult to traverse the map. Chasing a survivor around these walls of cars can also waste a lot of time if they start the chase with a significant lead. Going forward, these car piles will be broken up into smaller single.
That's why you recenter survivors before you chase them. A lot of people don't do that.
Potential spawn locations for pallets, helping
also something that's unique to me, by the way. Okay, recentering survivors is very important.
The Gas Heaven gas station itself has also been moved closer to the center of the map. Since this makes this building much easier to get to from anywhere on the map, we've reviewed its spawning rules to prevent strong combinations of windows from spawning and adjusted its pallet spawn locations. Throughout the realm, some of these changes will spill over into the remaining Autohaven Wreckers maps, including new edge tiles, small tiles that run along the map's boundaries, some of which include new gameplay such as possible pallet spawn locations.
Okay. Tackling healing. Because the anti-healing perks don't work, by the way.
There's no better way to avoid being put on a hook than healing your injuries. Even if the killer is relentless, an extra health state can buy your team more time to work on generators. Having
been in the
easy
game for a while,
access to
though.
quick and plentiful heals can cause problems, particularly for highly skilled survivors who can evade the killer for quite some time. An emergency med kit alone can heal the damage done after a long chase in roughly 10 seconds. This doesn't even begin to factor in all sorts of perks and add-ons which can
That's
speed
much
up
shorter
healing
than most
even further
chases.
and grant more heals before your med kit is depleted. For killers, this means that any chase that doesn't end with a hook, even if they manage to damage a survivor, can be completely undone in a matter of seconds.
Yep.
Keeping survivors injured and switching targets are often wise decisions, and with this in mind, we have a few changes in store for healing to make this more practical. First, healing will now take 24 seconds by default, previously 16 seconds. This will make each hit more impactful, ensuring that survivors need to spend longer to heal their wounds. Second, we have rebalanced medkits across the board. All medkits will now have 24 charges by default, allowing one heal before they are depleted.
Interesting.
The different rarities of medkits are as follows.
They just adjust the speed? That's pretty interesting. I think the purple medkit actually has 4 heals in it. With add-ons, it's actually at 4 heals, which is pretty incredible, by the way. Like a brown one just gives you a full heal, which is also pretty incredible. The healing speed. Increases altruistic healing speed by 30%, was 50. Skill check zones. Lastly, I'm going to pass on medkits.
Lastly, we have done a pass on medkit add-ons, bringing those which were overperforming in line with the rest. Add-ons which add more charges to your medkit have also been reviewed with the new healing time in mind, though it is now impossible for a medkit to fully heal a survivor more than twice in a match.
Yeah. Bundle of tweaks.
Gearhead first up. Gearhead currently reveals the aura of the next survivor to hit a great skill check after a survivor loses a health state. These conditions require quite a bit of work and luck on the killer's part to get value out of it. Gearhead will receive a slight rework. When a survivor loses a health state, Gearhead activates for 30 seconds. While active, any survivor who hits a good skill check will have their aura revealed to the killer for 6/7/8 of a second. This allows Gearhead to potentially provide information multiple times for each hook.
Absolutely
Killers who
worthless.
efficiently catch survivors will be able to keep Gearhead activated for a good portion of the match.
Why would you do that when you can just use the one where you hit a generator or you open a locker and you can see where survivors are? Why the fuck would you ever use that perk? Yeah, congratulations. I don't know what BHR was thinking with this one. Oh, look, you can see a survivor when they hit a great skill check. Wow, that's such a great perk. Okay. You could literally just make it so whenever they heal, you'd be able to reveal their location, which is what Nurse's Calling does, right? What is this? Which actually isn't that good either, because it's still inferior to the one where you tap the gen or where you open a locker. Within 28 meters. What? You can see him for 8 seconds. You could see him for 60 seconds, and it probably still wouldn't be that. Maybe 60 seconds would actually be reasonable for what the activation conditions for this. What the fuck? Okay. Yeah, got him. Got him good.
Overzealous grants a repair speed bonus when cleansing a totem, and a larger bonus when cleansing a hex totem. Little did we know the skirmishes this would cause between the boon lovers out there.
Those few that
Moving
exist.
Forward, Overzealous will also activate when blessing a totem in addition to cleansing.
Boons are worthless.
We've
Good
also
squads will
slightly
immediately blow them
increased
up.
the bonus to the
Either
8th
because
of
they're cheating or
September
they're just
10%
that
from
good at the game.
6/7/8%.
That's why people that always said that Ruin was a meta, it was never meta. Ruin was meta way back when Undying actually required you to cleanse basically all the totems. That's when Rune was meta. After that point, and there's people that still use it, True included, and a bunch of big killer streamers that kept using it. If you played against good survivors, they would blow that shit up immediately, and you got no value out of it, and you lose 2 perks. Rune was dead the moment they killed Undying. They nerfed Undying. It doesn't work. That being said, the same thing with totem builds. Totem builds do not work. Even when you use, let's say, something like what's the perk that allows you to put down Pentimento? Pentimento, where it allows you to put down more and more totems. It's been so long, guys. I still remember this shit. Random fucking perks, yeah. Where you can just put down, basically you put down fodder totems. We had a fodder totem build. Where you just put down a bunch of totems and you use it to protect. You use it to protect your totems that you don't want the survivors to actually find. Like, let's say, the one that prevents them blood favor, prevents them from dropping a pallet. You could put down meaningful totems in the middle of it. And then force the survivors to cleanse stuff. What I found was even when running this, they'd find the totems and blow them up. And there's also the Haunted Ground. Haunted Ground, they'll never blow up the Haunted Ground one unless they wanted to get me away from the hook, because they seem to know which one was Haunted Ground all the time. I ran it for like a week. They didn't give 2 shits about it. Very weird. But yeah, totem builds do not work because they just know where they are and they'll instantly blow them up. It does not work at all. Yeah. Pain Resonance.
Scourge Hook. Pain Resonance. This perk has gradually found its way back into the meta.
Oh no! Don't go meta!
We have given
Don't be meta. We address this.
The perk starts with 4 tokens. The first time each survivor is hooked on a Scourge Hook, the generator with the most progress will explode and lose progress. We've also reduced the difference between different tiers of the perk, now November 13th 15%.
So it's only 4 times? It only works 4 times? Perk starts with 4 tokens. Each time a survivor is hooked on Scourge Hook, the generator with the most progress explodes and loses progress. We've reduced this difference between different tiers now to 15%. That means it will at most reduce 60% of overall gen. Why? Well, that's dead. That's a dead perk. They capped it at 4 uses? That's dead.
Dead Hard. Though Dead Hard initially fell from grace after the 6.1.0 update, it has steadily climbed back to being one of most.
As people figured out how to use auto Dead Hard. It was never dead. People just didn't know how to use it.
Some precision to use, and further reducing the invulnerability window would make it far too unreliable and frustrating. Therefore, Dead Hard has also received a slight rework. Dead Hard will activate after safely unhooking a survivor. When activated, press the active ability button while injured and running to gain the endurance status effect for 0.5 seconds, then become exhausted. Dead Hard will deactivate when it successfully protects the user from damage. This will put a damper on how often Dead Hard can be used, keeping it as a powerful reward for survivor who have earned it.
Dead Hard will activate after safely unhooking a survivor. When activated, I assume it doesn't activate if you're already exhausted, but it'll prevent exhaust from activating. But it doesn't state that. Sometimes you'll get an effect that'll cause an exhaust, but won't actually. It'll still work even if you are exhausted. I think Sprint Burst. The one with the gates, when the gates are powered, activating. Ride exhaust. Press the active ability button while injured and running to gain the endurance status effect for 0.5 seconds, then become exhausted. Dead Hard will deactivate when it successfully protects the user from damage. You gain the endurance status effect for 0.5 seconds. Dead Hard will become deactivated when it successfully protects the user from damage. So what, you just keep pushing it? Does it not go on cooldown? You just keep hitting it when you're injured? It doesn't say that I mean, there's obviously other rules here. Whoever wrote this didn't include all the criteria because seems like half of a perk. So there's two different conflicting things here. One is it gives you endurance for 0.5, but then says Dead Hard will deactivate when it successfully protects the user from damage. So it won't deactivate until you get protected from damage, which means you could just keep spamming it. So whoever wrote this is like half the criteria here. Let's take a look at the wiki and see if that's actually has the update. Dead Hard cannot be used when exhausted. That wasn't included there, but I assume that's still the case. Not updated. There it is, 6.7. Dead Hard will deactivate when successfully protects you from damage. So you just get it forever until you take damage. Oh, maybe every 40 seconds you can use it again until you actually take damage after it activates. That's confusing, but my guess is so after you use the criteria, you get the activation criteria, you can keep using it every 40 seconds until it finally deactivates. You just, this would be more easy to understand if it had a token system. This is where you'd give someone a token every time they rescue someone and allow them basically multiple Dead Hard charges. Or multiple tokens would actually be a better use of that. Another reason just to chase the person that is getting off hooked. And another reason, by the way, grabs are incredibly important. Incredibly, incredibly important. Oh my god, they're nerfing overcharge. By the way, someone else has started using overcharge, which I used for 2 fucking years. It's true, by the way. Surprise, multiple people have started using overcharge. Kind of weird, huh? Because there's actually, we kept track of it, there's a decent number of survivors that will miss overcharge. And it allows you to apply a lot of pressure because people basically have to perform a skill check while under stress. And that's a good thing, especially when they're trying to tap gens.
Call of Brine.
Weird, huh?
Call of Brine quickly rose in popularity following the meta shake-up last year. Granting a large increase to the regression rate of generators, it's not uncommon for a generator to fully regress once a survivor is chased away. To tone down its power, we have reduced the additional regression speed to 115, 120, 125% was 150, 175 0.02%.
That's pretty potent, guys. So 125% additional regression. So I guess that means you're regressing at 225% instead of 300%. Which means you're basically still regressing the generator at half the speed the survivors are doing it instead of at 3/4 of the speed the survivors do it. Survivors can still do the generators faster. Okay. So they nerfed gens even more. Oh, overcharge is probably nerfed.
Overcharge similar to Call of Brine. Overcharge saw a similar rise in
Overcharge has been buffed since anniversary update, by the way.
Power over
and I use it prior to the anniversary update.
This perk also increases the regression rate of generators pretty substantially. To bring it in line with other perks, we reduced the maximum regression speed to 130%, was 200%. This would make it take longer for the regression rate to become beneficial, so at the same time, we've increased the starting regression speed to 85%, was 75%, to help offset this. Additionally, the penalty for missing the special skill check has been reduced to 2.75%, was 3.45%.
Huh. So, they took away 70%, and then they gave you an additional 10% to the starting bonus. What? Okay. And they reduced it by an extra 1% off of the missed skill check. Missed skill check was really what I was after, and it kind of sucks. I'd rather them nerf the regression more, or just remove the regression effect completely, and then turn it back to 5% additional in addition to the skill check. Just remove the additional penalty, because the added benefit of using overcharge in the first place is just forcing someone to do an event that could potentially cost them time. Although with really, really good survivors, they'll hit the skill checks all the time. I've even had squads where we had cheaters running around that, like, if they knew a generator was tapped, they'd have someone in the group specifically that would go disarm the gens, either because they were cheating or because they just knew. Yeah, so I'd have one specific survivor that would chase around my gens to disarm them. Circle of Healing still exists? No way.
Boon. Circle of Healing. This perk has become the jack of all trades of healing perks. Not only does it allow you and your fellow survivors to heal without a med kit, but it also increases the speed of healing across the board. Going forward, Boon. Circle of Healing will no longer allow survivors to heal without a med kit. Instead, it will provide a 40-45/50% healing speed bonus to healing others. This bonus will not apply to healing done with a medkit. Additionally, the auras of injured survivors with the boon's range will be revealed to all other survivors.
It's basically another perk, I believe. Yeah. So you can see when people are in the healing aura. That's actually pretty good. You still have to have a med kit. Pretty major, but you can also see anyone that's around basically the healing zone. You can set up basically a base with circle healing. That's actually, I'd say that's a take and give. That's almost proportional in my opinion. Killer updates. Ooh. Hillbilly is kind of a shitter. See, not the worst killer in the game. Worst killer in the game is the Trapper.
Killer updates starting with this mid-chapter. We'd like to include...
By the way, I love when I watch streamers. I still occasionally watch people that play Dead by Daylight, mind you. I love when you watch killer streamers that seem to assume that all killers are viable and no matter what, they'll still work. And it just depends on the survivors you're playing against. There's some killers that are just fucking trash. Just as like if you play an RPG or a MOBA or a MMO and your character, some characters just suck and they need to be buffed and fixed. And that's the way Dead by Daylight is. It doesn't matter what you think about them. It doesn't matter how much you like them. Some characters in the game just fucking suck dick. And that's the way they are. And pretending that they don't suck dick is not going to make them better. It doesn't matter how good you become at them. They just simply have caps to them. You just like certain classes in MMOs can only generate so much DPS because there's numbers associated with them. And if you don't have the numbers, you can't do shit. It doesn't matter.
Killer updates starting with this mid-chapter. We'd like to include a bundle of small tweaks to various killers in each update. These will be smaller scale than the reworks we've done in the past, focusing more on number tweaks than new
Hillbilly's been trashed for a while.
Changes. Larger reworks are still planned, but we want to show some love to our growing roster along the way. The Hillbillies start your chainsaws and don't worry about them overheating. We've adjusted the Hillbillies overheat mechanic to be much more forgiving.
Just be removed. I don't even know what's there.
The amount of heat generated from both starting to rev and continuing to rev your chainsaw has been dramatically reduced, making the overheat mechanic almost a non-factor when used in loops and over short distances.
Why is it even there?
Much akin to how he used to play. Just as before, heat will begin to dissipate as soon as the chainsaw sprint ends, meaning most of the heat generated from a short sprint will already be gone by the time your chainsaw is ready for another attack. The amount of heat generated while chainsaw sprinting, on the other hand, has been increased slightly.
What?
Though the changes above will help counteract this, longer sprints will cause your chainsaw to overheat quicker, so be careful not to let it overheat in an empty corner of the map. Last but not least,
don't use this ability to get across the map, which is one good use.
These add-ons will provide less movement speed than before and increase heat generation further.
The one useful thing for the Hillbilly was the fact that he could traverse the map. He had map traversal. That was like his one useful advantage. Hillbilly was the fact he could literally go across the map and go back across the map and apply pressure across the map. Literally the only part of him. Otherwise, he's a mouse one. He's like a shitty. If you're talking about a closed loop, he's like a shitty fucking cannonball. When it comes to actual looping. Why? Like, this doesn't help him at all. That's actually a nerf. That, like, the one good part about him was the fact he can go across the entire map super fast. Well, there you go, guys. Yeah, and he got this fucking... the Hillbilly got nerfed, guys.
The Pig the John's medical file add-on increases the pig's crouched movement speed. This add-on hasn't been performing very well, so we've decided to nerf the pig increase this add-on's movement speed bonus to 10%, with 6%.
No one's going to use it. Ambush on pig is only used for like memeing around loops. Sometimes memeing around loops. Depends on the loop. You can't use it for pretty much anything. It's just for memeing. Yeah, that's not going to help at all. They literally could give her fucking like predator They could give her like predator style camouflage, and she still probably wouldn't be that good as far as her her fucking ambush goes. Yeah, good job, BHVR. You saved the pig. Only thing good about pig is wasting time, and they got rid of that.
Only two of the Oni's add-ons, Black
barely get head pops
and
now.
Bloody Sash, allow him to move faster while absorbing blood orbs, losing less ground in the process. These add-ons weren't performing as well as we'd like, so we've given them some slight improvements. They will now increase movement speed while absorbing by 0.4 meters per second and 0.7 meters per second respectively, with 0.3 meters per second and 0.6 meters per second.
Okay.
The Nightmare.
Ready?
The Nightmare Sheep Block and Unicorn Block add-ons inflict blindness on survivors who trigger a Dream Snare or Dream Pallet. These add-ons weren't doing so well, so we've increased the duration of the blindness status effect on each of these add-ons by 30 seconds.
Still not going to use them, and Nightmare is still a shitter. Executioner is also a garbage killer. People said he's good. I finally tried him. He's trash. He doesn't have his ability, his what's it called, desecrated ground or whatever. Like people can walk through it or creep through it, and then his ability where he throws out his sword line, people can dodge it either at the inside or outside of a loop unless they're going down a long route line. He's a shitbird. Terrible, not terrible, not a good killer though.
The Executioner's Scarlet Egg add-on increases the duration of Killer Instinct inflicted by Rites of Judgment by 1.5 seconds. This doesn't provide much value since Killer Instinct only updates its position periodically. To make it more meaningful, we're increasing this bonus to 3 seconds.
Worthless. Clown's an alright killer, mainly because he has positional slowdowns.
The Clown the Redhead's Pinky Finger add-on can be incredibly powerful, allowing the Clown to instantly down a survivor after hitting him directly with a bottle. We've previously toned this add-on down by reducing the maximum number of bottles the Clown can hold, but it seems like this downside was not enough to bring it in line with other ultra-rare add-ons.
Now you can only have, 3 bottles, I think, because you're going to take the other add-on that increases your bottles. Increases the maximum number of bottles by 3, so you only have 1 if you don't take the add-on that increases it. Bright light interaction removal. Oh, there's some specific killers that get fucked by flashlights, by the way, Wraith in particular. Interesting. Hello?
Bright light interactions removal. When Dead by Daylight first released, only 3 killers were in the game. It wasn't unreasonable to bring a toolbox just in case you faced off against the Trapper or a flashlight to burn the Wraith when it was a 1 in 3 chance. But as the killer roster has grown, these mechanics have started to feel out of place. The majority of killers do not have any interaction with survivor items, leading to the ones that do feeling unfairly punished by something beyond their control. In the past, we removed the ability to sabotage the Trapper's bear traps to alleviate this issue.
Big deal.
In this update, we'll be removing flashlight interactions with various killer powers. Since some of these actions aren't very well known, we'll quickly run through each of them.
The Hague's a big one too. Like, if people that say Hague's viable, no fucking idea what they're talking about. Have you ever seen a Hague bullied by a pre-made, by a Swift? It's not pretty. It's one of the reasons I never, ever, ever play a Hague. Never gonna play a Hague. You go against good survivors, you'll have people literally burning your traps when you're not looking. You'll have people setting off your traps so you teleport to the wrong spot, away from whoever you're chasing, to avoid a spot that they might be going to that they know that there's a trap at, to force you to teleport to the wrong area. There is all different sorts of fucking ways to bully a Hague, to the point at which she won't even play. Like she'll just be a mouse 1 killer, and she's a 110, so she can't be a mouse 1 killer. That's pretty incredible.
The Wraith, we have removed the ability to burn the Wraith
out of his
cloak. This would also stun him in the process.
That's huge.
The nurse, similar to the Wraith, the nurse could also be burned while blinking. This didn't come up
also
very
not
often
very
since
common,
it was very risky and difficult to pull off, but it is also being removed. The artist survivors could shine a flashlight at crows to scare them
Yep.
away. This also didn't come into play very often since crows could easily be shooed away without using flashlight charges. The Hag.
Mm-hmm.
The Hag, arguably the most impactful, flashlights have long been the sole counter to the Hag's phantasm traps.
Yep.
Not only could they reveal the aura of nearby traps, but shining a flashlight at the trap would destroy it. Removing the flashlight effect from the Hag's power is a little trickier since it would leave survivors with no option but to set off a trap and risk the Hag teleporting.
And walk over him.
To ensure that this doesn't make the Hag too oppressive, we are adding the ability to wipe away a phantasm trap. In order to do so, survivors will need to spot the trap, crouch over to it to avoid setting it off, then perform a several-second-long action to clear it. While this will allow all survivors to clear traps, it will now be much more difficult and time-consuming to do so. Additionally, this prevents a survivor with a flashlight from destroying the Hag's traps mid-chase.
I mean, if they literally took that out, Hag would still not be OP, so... Yeah, you can still creep through traps, and as I mentioned, bullying the Hag by setting off traps with a coordinated swift. Yeah, once you see stuff like that start happening, and them knowing exactly where traps are, and people just walking in, setting off your traps as a way of either disarming them, or as a way of forcing you into a different chase that you don't want to take. Yeah, Hag's not a good killer at MMR. Even if they didn't have this aspect to it, so they tried to give her like a trapper treatment. Trapper's not a good killer, mind you. And I don't think she needs it, to be perfectly honest. I don't think she needs it. If you know where the trap is, you can creep walk over it if you have enough time, and if you don't, risk reward versus what's going on in the match, right? Make a choice. Yeah, and her traps are not the same thing I'd say as Trapper's traps either. So, yeah, I don't think she actually needs a way for people to disarm her traps, to be perfectly honest. No, I think the only exception there being Body Block Hag, which is like an add-on that no one uses, almost no one uses. Yeah. I don't know. I guess maybe. I don't think she doesn't even need, they don't even need the action of removing the trap. And she probably still wouldn't be that OP. But, Dead by Daylight.
The Deep Rift and beyond late last year, a deeper level of the Rift was revealed, allowing players who had already reached Tier 70 to go above and beyond and continue progressing to earn alternate versions of outfits. Starting with the Tools of Torment mid-chapter update, this Deep Rift will feature unique visuals to better differentiate the bonus Deep Rift tiers from the regular Rift. As for tomes, you may notice a new trend emerging where the most recent chapter's lore is expanded in the following tome. It's no coincidence. This is something we'll be doing for all new original chapters moving forward. This will allow us to expand further on the most recently introduced characters' lore in a more natural and exciting way. Licensed chapters, meanwhile, may be an exception to this. While we would love to expand upon their stories as we have done in the past with the likes of Ghostface and Bill Overbeck, licensed characters come from franchises of their own with their own stories to tell. Therefore, the tomes followed licensed chapters may feature existing original characters instead. And if you've been waiting to learn more about your favorite characters from years past, don't worry, they won't be forgotten. Older characters will still be featured throughout new tomes as minor characters. With that, we've reached the end of this month's developer update. The public test build for the Tools of Torment mid-chapter update will open next week. We look forward to reading your feedback once you've had a chance to try it out.
Okay. So overall, Wraith actually that's a decent buff. Wraith can definitely get bullied by flashlights, especially if it's a swift. So that getting removed from Wraith is actually a pretty big bonus to him, to be perfectly honest. That's a pretty big deal. There's a couple notable things here. Clown was his pinky build as a meme, in my personal opinion. It's not something you should depend on, and them nerfing it I don't think is a big deal. Fucking Hillbilly got nerfed. I mean, he doesn't overheat as fast, but the one good thing he's really good at is going across the map and sniping people that aren't paying attention and or just traversing the map. He no longer has that, or not nearly as good. So, yeah, I guess you can use him as a shitty Billy in... Not Billy, Butcher? Fuck. Here, I had a brain fart. Cannibal. You can use him as a shitty cannibal. There we go. How the fuck did I forget that? You can use him as a shitty cannibal. At the end of the day, he's not very good. Definitely did not expect that. So I think they thought they were helping, but at the end of the day, they weren't actually helping at all. Yeah, Hillbilly got nerfed. Hillbilly, one of the shittiest killers in the game, basically got nerfed. Because they seem to think he can do what Cannibal does, and he can't. He fucking can't. You can kind of do back revs, but at the same point, when you're doing back revs, you probably could, chase them down in the first place. So, yeah, no. Yeah, I guess maybe for someone they're like, oh my god, he could do more back revs or something. Back revs where basically you go up to you're literally right on top of the survivor and you rev your chainsaw and you charge them and you can one shot them. Downside is you could do that with fucking Cannibal. And yeah. So, yeah. Good. There's a lot of worthless perks and changes in here that aren't gonna see any light of day. We talked a bit about the Blood Web. The Blood Web is still inferior compared to what it used to be. It looks like they nerfed gen regression perks overall, in general, to give survivors an easier time. A lot of people are now doing what they call it the tapping meta. Basically what I did 3 years ago, when it was actually always ahead of the curve, by the way, guys. Did it basically 2 years ago. Is now become commonplace because it's a really good way of controlling an area. Oh, the killers are growing up so fast. They've been playing the game for 6 years, and they're starting to learn stuff I learned in all of a month. And not a month, 6 months. Yeah, good for them. Good for them. Boop. I fucking love Dead by Daylight, mainly because for some reason, there's just like a whole part of the game that doesn't really understand how to play it, and it's fucking weird. Only game that's like that. Even like the top tier streamers and killer mains and even some of the survivor mains just don't seem to know what they're doing, or if they do, they don't really convey it to people around them. Fucking weird. Anyways, yeah, this is a big buff for the Wraith. Hey, I honestly don't think they even need to make it so that her traps could be removed. And she probably still wouldn't be that OP. Big one, though, is I guess you can dump your points faster in the Blood Web. Healing's big, too. That's a big healing nerf. There's that. So, big healing nerf. Medkit nerf. Not healing nerf. Medkit nerf. Easier blood webs. They somehow avoided giving survivors a huge weapon to wield, which is the visual blood web, or the visual air radius. Yep. Someone's going to be bitching about that, because they essentially wanted to see if it give an arrow in the direction the killer's coming from, or some stupid shit like that. Nope, they found a way of actually balancing that. Good for them. Yeah, Gen Kick meta nerfed. Gen Kick regression in general nerfed. More incentive for people to tunnel and camp, which they should in the first place. Yeah. Interesting. It's always curious to see where Dead by Daylight's going, so. Interesting. Let's make an upload out of that, guys. We are falling behind tonight. Load it to the tubes. Dead by Daylight Reddits. We gotta wait a little bit for my VOD to buffer. $60 is a self-heal, 80 plus seconds with a mangled debuff. Good. That's with self-heal. What is it called? Oh, there's a lot of comments. How the survivors are fired up. Dead hard nerf. I don't know, it's circle healing. Self-care now takes 68 seconds to heal. Overzealous has some great value. Why would you use overzealous when you have nurses calling? Pig Adam was underperforming, so we decided to nerf the pig. It was genuinely hilarious. They nerfed Billy's speed add-ons and completely untouched blights. Like the blight speed add-ons are so busted they're insta-banned in comp. I like how they mention comp, like there's any sort of credibility associated with the competitive scene in Dead by Daylight, besides Tofu nonchalantly out of nowhere deciding to host a community night for comp, which a lot of the people that I've seen play on his comp nights are fucking garbage, both in Survivor and Killer. Not everyone, but a lot of them. I've played against a lot harder squads, and I'm a much harder killer. Like some of the people I've seen play. Oh, jeez. It's like literally just like watching a pub match. At least he's learning. And that's kind of the upside to it, is it seems like he's starting to figure out meta stuff. Well, the fact we finally get an added visual terror radius. Okay. Good. I'm not against it, by the way. Accessibility options aren't a bad thing. It was the fact that some survivors were kind of posing as someone that would like see benefit from it, when in fact they're just people that want more benefit as someone that's normal. Sorry to break it to you, but the Nightmare isn't doing well in general. Nope. Nightmare is a pretty poop killer. So healing is dead. Medkits have been nerfed too. Healing orgies were a thing way back when I played. Way back before Circle of Healing, where everyone just meets up and jacks off on each other and they all end up healed. Self-healing is gutted, is already gutted. Medkits weren't though. But hey, Gearhead is a pretty perk now. What? The survivor loses a health state, Gearhead activates for 30 seconds. While active, any survivor who hits a good skill check will have their aura revealed to the killer for 8 seconds. Why would you pick that? Once again, when you have the locker and the gen kick perk that just reveals survivors. Okay. Yeah, no. Gearhead is a pretty good perk. No, it's not. No. Just say you don't want solo players to play the game. BH fair, holy fuck. The active radius to circle healing, I think, is a pretty good trade-off with circle healing for self-heals, because you can see where people are approaching or going around the area of circle healing. People can see where boons are. Love what changes quality of life, and still worse than it was prior to the anniversary update. Why is Pain Res still a Scourge perk? It has 4 uses. Why not just use it on any hook? No shit. I guess that's kind of a good point. Start of the match, next progress gen is like 1%, so if you perk, you'd activate on a hook, then essentially do nothing and waste its token. There's almost no way that you're going to know the state of all the generators on the map, and I think that only applies at the very beginning of the map if you download someone in like the first 5 seconds. If, like, at the beginning of the map, 3 people spawn, almost always spawn next to each other, and then all 3 of them will hop on the gen at the same exact moment, and almost always you'll have a gen that pops almost instantly at the beginning of the match because survivors basically go to the first gen all at the same time. So no, I wouldn't say this is actually a use case here. I disagree with that. There is some instant min-max to it, but I also disagree with that. That's incredibly rare. If you have survivors that 3 of them can't find a gen immediately. All the gen regression got nerfed. Well, a lot of it got nerfed. Almost feels like self-heal is a trap. Like if you're using what is the self-healing perk? Self-care? If you're using self-care, like it almost feels like you're just wasting time. Like it's a trap card. Like the perk itself is a trap. Well, time to never see a Billy ever again. You saw Billy's part of this. Billy needs buffs. Wish BH Fair would read my name. They nerfed Billy, he was dead and they just fucked his corpse over. It doesn't matter when you don't have any add-ons to make it playable. Why would you nerf Billy? I haven't played the game in 6 months, and even back when I played it, Billy mains were incredibly rare. Not really sure about healing change. Nerfed the med kits and circle healing, sure, but increased the base healing speed by 8 seconds, and the current tunneling meta makes me worried. Yeah, as it turns out, when you're playing against Swifts, though, they kind of know what they're doing, and they can get heals off incredibly fast. So, especially for mouse one killers, when they don't down someone, it's a huge deal. When you have people that are rotating out a chase to heal each other, it's actually a really big deal. Where they'll have 2 people actively rotating to chase with you, 1 person doing a gen and 1 person in chase, and then they'll rotate out someone for protection hits. That was a thing 2 years ago. Prepare for 300 sprint bursts. Has no counterplay posts a day from here on. What? Why? They didn't change sprint burst. It's alternative to dead hard? Okay, that doesn't mean it's good. Oftentimes, people that have sprint bursts are shitters, too. From back when I played, I'd stereotype them. Anyone that had sprint bursts is usually worth going after because they aren't very good. They just try to run away immediately and expect the killer to peel. If they don't, you can usually bring them down. It's occasionally not the case, but a lot of times it was where you'd encounter someone with sprint bursts and they just jet away, and they just usually aren't very good. So they try to get a head start to deter you from chasing them. Flashlight interactions are some of the most fun interactions in the game. Yeah, someone plays a bully squad. I'm very disappointed that instead of expanding on these features, basically making a killer completely worthless and basically jacking each other off in voice comms, they decided to remove all of them. Like, what the fuck? Yep, that's a bully squad right there. I'm sure they have had their plenty of fun with Wraiths and Hags. Good for them. Bravo. Read through the lines there, guys. Uh-huh. Even less counterplay against tunneling killers. A lot of things you can do against tunneling killers, including taking protection hits. People complain about Blight because Nurse got nerfed. Now Blight's going to get nerfed, and then probably going to go back to Nurse and nerf her again until they're basically about the same grade as like Nemesis. Rose's add-ons go untouched. People complain about solo queue, solo queue, solo queue. That's after they buff solo queue, by mind you, by giving them status effects, status icons. Brian got dumpstered? Yes, it did. As did Overcharge. On extra regression per second is now 1/16th of a speed of a single survivor repairs. Regress is generated for 16 seconds with Circle of a Call of Brine. A survivor will have to work on an extra second. That's not true. 125%. You regress it normally at a quarter of the normal speed, and it adds an additional 125% onto that, so it's regressing at 225. So it adds a quarter regression speed. Not right. It's additive, it's not multiplicative. Wrong. He has 200 upvotes or 200 points. Wrong. So it's still not very good, but they also further nerfed it. Massive Hague nerf. Not really. I don't think they needed to give survivors a way of disarming their traps, though. A lot of ways you can be a smart-ass survivor and harass a Hague. No games tonight, Craig. We're about there. This is Dead by Daylight update, so this is kind of turning into a content piece, as it turns out, so. And I had something up in my other window. Craig. Good evening, Craig. Probably going to play it here in a second after I make this upload. Not one change about tunneling and camping. Oh no! Winning the game? Don't win the game. Don't win the game, killers, please. Please don't win the game, Mr. Killer. Okay. I love Dead by Daylight. Don't play to win. Stop it. Stop it. Pre-dropping will definitely spike. I mean, no way for survivors to take a hit without healing being nerfed. I mean, sure, you can take a hit and then you start pre-dropping. It's not really any different. I don't suspect this will change at all. Also, why nerf Billy? Actually upset about the light interactions being removed. Always felt interesting. The only people knew about it would take advantage of. Another bully squad. Between the lines, guys, that's literally everything about this community. It's literally about passive-aggressive behavior, subterfuge, people trying to get their way by acting like they're hurt or somehow they're bereaved. I mean, it could just possibly be like they're that inept because they've never played Killer, which is also very true. As I mentioned before, I said at one point, I think 3/5 of the community never has touched Killer before. 1/5 maybe plays Killer and Survivor, and 1/5 is like Survivor Killer mains. Maybe not even that. Like 4/5 of the community has never touched Killer. So 8 out of 10 people have never touched Killer. And then maybe 1 out of 10 have played both sides, and then 1 out of 10 is a Killer main only. Survivors uninstalling. Oh no, survivors are uninstalling. I'm sure they'll never run another exhaust perk ever. Jeez. Yeah, we talked about that, and that I don't know. Like, as the wording is kind of fucked up on that, they didn't have a complete wording there for the perk. Yeah. That being said, when people thought Dead Hard was dead the last time, they switched to other perks too, like Sprint Burst or Lithe or some other perk, where it gives you an exhaust effect. Yeah, there are other exhaust effects in the game. They probably didn't need to do Dead Hard the way that they did. It also means that you might just get people that are going to spam on hook simply because they want Dead Hard too. And it's kind of weird. I said that when we covered the patch notes or the dev blog. It's kind of weird that they didn't add a token system to it. So based on the number of unhooks you have, it gives you a number of activations. Does it mean you only get 4 charges of pain res now? Yeah, max is 60% gen regression, dead perk. Meta may have been slightly too much, but gens still fly in high ranks. Yes, they do. I don't know who's using pain resonance. It didn't seem like really any of the streamers I watched were using pain resonance. I don't know why they would. There are better options. 4 tokens is too low. Yes, it is. Genuinely think that devs nerf buff whatever people are complaining about Twitter or Reddit. I've talked about this on my stream multiple times. It's 100% true. Mainly whenever streamers or survivors knee jerk about shit, they just hard nerfed gen regression for killer. If you guys have noticed that, pain resonance, Call of Brine, and also overcharge, all 3 were nerfed hard, and pain resonance is dead. So. Do. And that's the big thing that survivors have been complaining about was 3-genning and gen kick meta. I wonder if this means they're going to switch to a cadence where they do a big spike in power where everything gets out of control, as with the anniversary update, and then they just nerf everything along the way until it reaches bottom, and then they'll do a big spike in power again like anniversary update, and then nerf everything and do like a 2-year cadence in which they hard spike and then they nerf along the way, because we're on a slant now where they're nerfing along the way and the meta's kind of slightly changing along the way, and they'll do something kind of crazy to kind of make it out of control, like with the boons were fucking ridiculous when they first came out. Circle of Healing was absolutely broken as shit. Yeah. Oh! You know what this is? This is a prelude to Basekit Unbreakable. They've done this before. This is prelude to Basekit Unbreakable. I was just thinking, with the way medkits are going right now, this is intentional. So you're gonna want something like you could get off the ground, like not Undying, whatever the boon is that allows you to get off the ground. Yeah, I think what they're doing is this is the prelude. This is the beginning. Changes to getting Basekit Unbreakable in the game. So they're making it so you go down more often, and then making it so when you go down, it's not as big of a deal when you end up on the ground. Oh, so they might be addressing slugging. Yeah. Yeah. This is the prelude to Basekit Unbreakable. Yeah, this is 100% this prelude to Basekit Unbreakable. They nerfed your ability to stay at a higher health state and drop your activation level, so you're going to end up on the ground more, because that's true, because you're going to have less self-healing. You're going to have less healing in general, but they're going to make it so you can get off the ground easier. This is 100%, I bet you're going to see Basekit Unbreakable probably in the next month. Maybe next month's patch is probably going to have Basekit Unbreakable. If not, maybe 2 weeks from now, after this patch launches. So a month after this patch launches, which could be in 2 weeks from now, and then maybe a month after that, we're going to see Basekit Unbreakable. Which I thought they shelved because it's a really bad idea, and I still think it's a really fucking bad idea. Even if they do what they're doing right here, I firmly believe this is the prelude to Basekit Unbreakable. This right here, because they're trying to keep you from staying at a full health state. They're trying to make it so you'll go through the health states more often, but when you end up on the ground, you can get off the ground and get back to health, like you can get back up and start doing stuff. There's a lot of perks that activate when you end up on the ground and vice versa. And there's a lot of killers that need to slug. Well, not a lot of killers, but it's a legitimate strategy that you have to use depending on what kind of killer you are, such as if you play twins being the most obvious example of a killer that depends on slugging. because of the way she applies pressure with Victor. Yeah, this is 100% the start of Basekit Unbreakable. Yeah. Well, gotta make sure we put that in Twitter before someone else thinks of that. Yeah. Nice. Get sussed, BHVR. We've done this before. What change was it where they did a prelude prior to them doing a bunch of different things? We talked about this before. It was like 2 years ago. I think it was around the anniversary update. What was it? Like this is tickling a neuron somewhere that's barely connecting with stuff. Old neuron, guys. Yeah, no one here has mentioned. Try. Bait. Unbreak. Whoa. Always ahead of the curve, guys. Unbreak. Yep. Too bad we don't have millions of people watching me. Yeah, fuck you, phone. Didn't they say they were putting Unbreakable Basekit in a long time ago? They did, but then they shelved it. They didn't talk about it. They said that like 6 months ago they were talking about Basekit Unbreakable, and then it fell off the radar like a month after when there's a bunch of outcry, and they haven't talked about it since, and people basically thought it was dead. I thought it was dead. And I hoped it was dead, because it's a really bad idea. That breaks a lot of interaction in the game. I liked what you could hit and run with Wraith before boons were a thing. Yeah, there was the harassment strategy a while ago, hit and run strat, that died out. There's a lot of streamers that couldn't give that shit up, by the way. That's something you could do in coincide with Ruin. And you could still encourage that kind of gameplay. They don't, though, but you'd have to encourage it like Ruin would actually have to be a thing again. They don't have something like that. Something where it infers if you cause survivors to get pushed around the map a lot, which is what hit and run does, and applies a lot of overall pressure. That I mean, hit and run could be back actually with the way they just nerfed medkits. Hit and run wasn't really a thing after Circle. Definitely wasn't a thing after Circle of Healing took off. And then medkits, I mean, even if you do hit and run, medkits and healing orgies kind of prevented that. That's why I never do hit and run, because healing orgies prevent that. You play against a Swift, they all just get together, you have a healing orgy, everyone's healed up. Could be. And Wraith that's a pretty meaty buff, I would say. Like, when you play against Swifts, guys, and you're a Wraith, you're fucked. It might not be normal in most games, but if you're playing at high MMR and you go against a Swift, you're going to get fucked by flashlights. They're just going to stick it up your ass, and you're going to like it. That's what's going to happen. Even when you think you're safe, there's going to be another guy shining a flashlight at you to fuck you. Yeah, I think this is the prelude to Unbreakable. They haven't mentioned it all, mind you. There's no mention in the patch notes here. There's no mention in this post. No one else is thinking about Basekit Unbreakable. Always ahead of the curve, guys. Even though I haven't played this game in 6 months, still can see those wheels turning. I mean, I played it for fucking 2 years, so. Not the healing nerf. This game's a clicking simulator at this point. Fucking healing's clicking. I mean, yeah. I don't know how I feel about Lightburn on Nurse getting removed. Essentially, they just buffed her. Dude. So, we've played against a lot of high MMR squads, and you guys might not think of it. Literally, just look at my highlights on YouTube, or you can look at them on Twitch here. Back when I was playing Dead by Daylight, we played against a lot of fucking sweaty Swifts. Even when I played against sweaty Swifts, the amount of times I had a stint where I played Nurse for about like 2 months when I first started playing. This is like my first hardcore character I tried out. I played Nurse for like 2-3 months-ish. And I basically got pretty high ranked. This is prior to MMR being in the game. Nurse, I think I only got Lightburned as Nurse once. And I've played against a lot of sweaty Swifts. So, saying this is, I don't think this is, even when you play against hardcore Swifts, getting Lightburned as Nurse Wraith, on the other hand, gets fucked in the ass. Nurse, I don't think ever really got fucked by flashlights. Yeah. This guy is on an old train here, still complaining about Nurse. Yeah, the new one to complain about is Blight, by the way, not Nurse. Get over it. I mean, he hasn't played the game in years at this point. He doesn't even know about the Nurse nerfs. Yeah, no. I would agree with them removing it. I felt as though that was an old mechanic that shouldn't be there. Yeah, I 100% think that Basekit Unbreakable is about to pop. BHVR ever play their games at all? Oh, I mean, there's someone here that's talking about hit and run. Sloppy Butcher hit and run style gameplay. Yeah, which is pretty boring in my MMO. I like the thing is, like, I was never against people doing hit and run gameplay at all. Like, I like the idea that there's more than one gameplay style that you can play in the game. I'm very heavy on territory control and area control, which is why I play heavily around hooks and around gens, around not just the 3-gen, but heavily around gens, which is kind of where everyone navigated to recently with the gen kick meta, which I had done for years, despite there being multiple ways of playing. I have done that for years. There being a little bit of everything. If you want to do hit and run, and I don't think there's a problem with it. Certain killers are better at that than others. Wraith being the primary example of that. So they nerfed Billy so further. He got fucked in the ass. Yeah, all these Billy mains. Yeah, all these fucking Billy mains. You know what we could do to these Billy mains? Let's just shit them and fuck them in the ass. Yeah, you think you can be a cannibal? Nope, you're a Billy main. You can neither traverse the map really fast nor catch people off guard anymore. It's just like, okay. Yep, got him good. Fucking Billy mains. Game already losing a substantial amount of players. It's not. People always quote Steam charts. Steam charts being just a small part of the overall pie. By the way, we talked about this earlier in the stream where I was talking about Dota 2 or not Dota 2, Counter-Strike 2 and how it's basically just not going to be a thing at all. Which, if you guys are curious about that, look at the beginning of the stream. People always quote numbers from here and talk about how the games are dying and stuff and try to be alarmist. It's not really. Dead by Daylight's doing alright. And this is just on Steam numbers too, being cross-platform. So we have 1 year, big updates. We scroll back. So anniversary update brought in a lot of players. What was that? That was in fall of 21, I believe. Then it slumps down, and they have a big update, brings back players, and it slumps down. It's been doing this for years. It goes down, and goes back up, and then goes down again. Anniversary update brought in a lot of players. I guess it did go up, and then it went back down, and then now it's doing alright still, so. I wish you could change this to average players instead of peak players. I believe this is peak. But if we look at average player count here, so anniversary update I believe was in September. It was basically when Nemesis came out. It was a month after Nemesis came out. Right here in 21, 50,000, and it slumped down 40 down to 29, 34. Went back up a little bit. Now it's slumped. It's basically about status quo, but people say this game's dying. Like if you look at it, it's almost the same. There was a big update with anniversary update. And people said, oh, that's what killed the game was MMR. It didn't. This is where people misread stats. So the anniversary update brought in a lot of people. Like when they're pounding their drum about it right here, and then it dropped off. Now, if you look at the numbers prior to the anniversary hype, which is right about here in May, prior to them start talking about it in June, you'll notice the numbers are about the same as they are right now. Maybe a little bit higher. Maybe not even that, like tiny bit higher. Prior to anniversary update. The anniversary update was a big deal, and a lot of people don't realize what a big deal it was. And even then, like you go back far enough now, it's basically going down quite a bit. Numbers right now are relatively stable, and they've been stable for quite a while. The update, the big benefit to the MMR, or not to benefit to the MMR, benefit to player base was the anniversary update, and then that died out. And I think that it wasn't MMR, that was the Boon update. Boon update scared away a lot of people. Circle of Healing was very, very, very oppressive for a long time, unless you knew how to play the game, which is you have to get rid of the player, which people learned 2 years later. Surprise, now we're at the place where people tunneling and camping is actually seen as a good strategy, because it is. Surprise, it actually is. But yeah, the game's not dying. The game's not dying. They look at this, they go, oh my god, we had 38,000 in September 2022, now we're at 32,000 last month. Oh my god, the game's dying. But if you look prior to the anniversary update here, it's basically about the same. It's not that big of a deal. And prior to that, the game's grown a lot. And this is just, once again, Steam. Steam, I'd say, is a very small part of the player base compared to cross-platform. Console. This is generally a game where people are... It's like Mario Kart. It's a very casual... It is a very casual, competitive experience, like Mario Kart. And just as rigged, to be kind of honest about that. Just as rigged as Mario Kart is. Okay. Let's turn this into a highlight, guys. Good thing we read the Reddit comments there. So yeah, always ahead of the curve, guys. This is the Prelude to Unbreakable. Basekit Unbreakable. This is 100% Prelude to Basekit Unbreakable. Yep. Good shit. Where were we? You gotta wait for it to buffer a little bit here, and then we're gonna make a video. Hotstar thinks healing nerf will lead to casual players getting absolutely dumpster, leading to Overwatch. Always ahead of the curve, even ahead of Odds Darva, the 9,000 viewer streamer here, who's played the game for 7 years. I've been here since the raid. Oh god. Yeah. Like true. This is why I like Dead by Daylight, guys. I always seem to have like this unique perspective. This is one of the things why I still make highlights and we still talk about this, is because I seem to have this unique perspective that no one else has, and they eventually figure it out, but it takes them a while. Love that. It makes me feel good. I don't think I'm using death bars anymore. Okay. Bye-bye. By Circle of Healing. I don't think so. I think Circle of Healing is going to be a good perk for setting up bases for people to go to the heal. They probably, I think for Circle of Healing, they probably should extend the range of Circle of Healing. Is one of the things they should have done in it, is they should increase the range of Circle of Healing to compensate for its new effects and make it more of a healing zone. Back to what it was prior to them nerfing, because Boons got nerfed, right? Boons got nerfed a couple times. So they probably should have increased the radius to make it more of a healing zone for people to approach. Shrimp versus the new Undisputed King. Maybe. Why they think is going to be very popular as well. Will we see a spike in Legion players? Possibly more Wraith than Legion. Legion isn't very good. You hope he's going to be good, but he's not. People just split if they know how to play properly, and then you're just a mouse one killer. Okay. Yeah, back when I played Valiant, back when I was streaming it, there was a lot of cross-platform players. You can just see based on the icons. I'd say it was maybe 1 in 4 out of all the players I'd see, like 1 in... maybe, I don't know. The higher MMR you are, the less cross-platform you see, simply because of the way controls work. Not because they're inferior players, but when you only have certain controls to work with, you're only going to be able to do so much, so... that's just the way it goes.